Sometimes in hip-hop, the violence never stayed in the booth. What follows are documented cases where rappers were convicted, sentenced, or legally tied to killings. Some paid with decades, some paid with months, some barely paid at all. Rod Diggs. Ronald Herron, known in rap circles as Rod Diggs, operated at the intersection of underground hip-hop and organized street crime. Prosecutors identify him as a Bloods gang leader in Brooklyn, while he was actively releasing music and appearing in videos alongside recognizable artists. Federal investigators tied Diggs to 3 murders, extensive racketeering activity, and drug trafficking. His own music became a liability. Lyrics and videos were introduced as evidence to establish patterns of behavior, motive, and association. One line, where Diggs rapped about beating a body, became central to the prosecution's narrative. Although he had previously been acquitted of 1 murder in state court, federal charges carried heavier consequences. Diggs was convicted and sentenced to multiple life terms, effectively ending both his freedom and his music career. C. Murder. C. Murder rose to prominence under No Limit Records, standing alongside his brothers Master P and Silk the Shocker during the label's commercial peak. His stage name, once a branding decision, later became an unavoidable irony. In 2002, a fight outside a Louisiana nightclub escalated. 16-year-old Steve Thomas was beaten and fatally shot. Multiple witnesses identify C. Murder as the shooter. He was convicted of second-degree murder in 2003, only to have the verdict overturned due to prosecutorial misconduct. The retrial in 2009 ended the same way as the first. Another conviction, another verdict. This time, no reversal. C. Murder received life in prison, later changing his name to C. Miller, though the sentence remained unchanged. For C. Murder, there was no safety net, no cultural shield. The next case shows what happens when the defendant is already bigger than the genre itself. Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg's murder case unfolded at the worst possible moment, just as he was becoming a national star. In 1993, Snoop and his bodyguard, McKinley Malik Lee, were involved in a confrontation with a rival gang member in Los Angeles. Lee shot and killed the man. Both Lee and Snoop were arrested and charged with murder under California's felony murder rule. Snoop spent nearly 2 years under house arrest, unable to tour freely, record normally, or escape the shadow of the case. His public image hung in the balance as the trial became a media spectacle. In 1996, both men were acquitted after the jury accepted the self-defense argument. The case permanently shaped Snoop's career, directly inspiring the song "Murder Was the Case," which became one of his most iconic tracks. Unlike others on this list, Snoop walked away legally innocent, but the experience left a permanent imprint on his music and public persona. Dresta. Andre Deshaun Wicker, better known as Dresta, is remembered for his role on Real Motherfucking G's, a West Coast anthem rooted in real street tension. In 1992, Dresta was involved in a gang-related shootout in Watts, Los Angeles. The intended target, Tyrone Thomas, was killed. Dresta himself was seriously wounded but survived. Authorities later charged him in connection with Thomas's death. Instead of a murder conviction, Dresta pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter. His sentence was 1 year of probation, a stark contrast to the life lost in the exchange. Gucci Mane. Gucci Mane's case is often misrepresented online, stripped of context and flattened into rumor. In 2005, Gucci was attacked inside his Atlanta home by multiple men. According to court records, the intruders assaulted him, prompting Gucci and his associates to open fire. One of the attackers, later identified as Pookie Lock, was killed. Gucci was arrested and charged with murder. The case drew attention not just because of his rising profile, but because the facts aligned closely with self-defense. Evidence showed forced entry, physical assault, and corroborating witness accounts. In 2006, prosecutors dropped the charges due to insufficient evidence to disprove self-defense. No trial, no conviction, no sentence. The incident became a turning point in Gucci's life, eventually influencing both his music and his later personal transformation. JD. JD was part of the Lynch Mob, Ice Cube's politically charged group that debuted on America's Most Wanted before releasing their own gold-certified album. As the group prepared their second project, JD was arrested on a murder charge. Fellow member T-Bone faced a separate case and was acquitted, highlighting how differently similar accusations can end. JD was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. He has consistently maintained his innocence, but the conviction has never been overturned. Mac Minister. Mac Minister was a San Francisco rapper and street promoter, whose name became permanently tied to one of hip-hop's most infamous revenge cases. Mac Minister's case is deeply tied to the murder of Bay Area legend Mac Dre. Authorities believe Dre's killing triggered retaliation, not justice. Prosecutors argued that Minister helped orchestrate the murder of Kansas City rapper Fat Tone, whom they believe was responsible for Dre's death. Fat Tone's body was found outside a Las Vegas construction site. Surveillance footage placed Minister near the MGM Grand shortly before the killing. In 2008, Mac Minister was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy. His sentence was life without parole, closing the book on one of hip-hop's most infamous revenge cases. Max B. Max B was a Harlem rapper tied to Dipset's rise, respected for his melodic hooks and street authenticity before a single criminal case permanently derailed his career. Max B's conviction did not hinge on pulling the trigger, but on planning the crime. In 2006, 2 men were robbed at a Holiday Inn in Fort Lee, New Jersey. One of them, David Taylor, was shot and killed by Max B's associates. Prosecutors argued that Max B directed the robbery and coordinated those involved. He was convicted on 9 counts, including murder, robbery, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The sentence was 75 years. Appeals failed. Despite continued support from peers like French Montana, Max B remains incarcerated, with the projected release date decades away. Shi Ali. Shi Ali's story feels like a warning written in slow motion. As a teenager, he was embraced by the Native Tongues movement, appearing alongside artists who represented intelligence, positivity, and creative freedom in early 90s hip-hop. He released the fabulous Shi Ali while still a minor, becoming one of the youngest rappers with a major profile debut. By 2000, that early promise had collapsed. During an argument involving his girlfriend's family, Shi Ali shot and killed her brother. The circumstances were not rooted in gang rivalry or criminal enterprise, but in personal conflicts spiraling out of control. After the shooting, Shi Ali fled. He successfully avoided capture for over a year, even appearing twice on America's Most Wanted, which turned his case into a national spectacle. When he was finally arrested, the fall was complete. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 12 years in prison. By the time he was released, the era that had celebrated him no longer existed. His case stands out not because of brutality, but because of how quickly raw talent gave way to irreversible consequence. G-Dep. G-Dep was a Harlem street rapper on Bad Boy Records, carving out a raw, street-level identity during the label's glossy mainstream peak. His case is unique because justice arrived by invitation. In 1993, Depp attempted to rob a stranger in Harlem. The struggle turned violent, and Depp shot the man before fleeing. The victim, John Henkel, later died. The case went cold. No arrest, no charges, no closure. 17 years later, G-Dep walked into a Harlem police precinct and confessed. Detectives were initially skeptical, but details from his account aligned with the unsolved murder. The case was reopened and officially closed with his admission. Depp later explained that guilt had followed him for years, eroding any success he achieved. In interviews, he framed the confession as a moral obligation rather than a legal strategy. The court still sentenced him to 15 years to life, the minimum possible under New York law. His story isn't about evading justice, it's about what happens when someone finally stops running from it. Cassidy. Cassidy built his reputation on lyrical combat, but real gunfire brought consequences that bars couldn't outrap. In 2005, a confrontation in Philadelphia escalated into a shooting involving Cassidy and two associates. 3 unarmed men were hit by gunfire. Desmond Hawkins was shot in the back and later died from his injuries. Cassidy initially faced heavy charges, including third-degree murder, attempted murder, and weapons offenses. At the time, it looked like his career might end permanently. However, as the case progressed, witness testimony weakened. One key witness recanted, and the prosecution's narrative collapsed. The result was a plea to involuntary manslaughter. Cassidy served 8 months in prison, a sentence that shocked many observers given the loss of life involved. The case remains one of the most cited examples of how drastically outcomes can shift when evidence falls apart, even when the incident itself is undisputed. Big Lurch. Big Lurch was a Texas rapper whose name became inseparable from one of the most disturbing crimes ever linked to hip-hop. Big Lurch's case reads less like a criminal file and more like a horror script. In 2002, while under the influence of PCP, Lurch murdered his roommate, Tanisha Isius, in an act of extreme violence. He disemboweled her, removed her organs, and fled the scene. Police later found him naked in the street, covered in blood, screaming incoherently. During arrest and medical evaluation, authorities discovered human remains in his stomach. The brutality of the crime left little room for ambiguity. Lurch pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, citing drug-induced psychosis. The jury rejected the defense. He was convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Unlike other cases on this list, there was no debate over guilt, no alternate narrative, and no public split in opinion. Only shock, finality, and a permanent sentence. Same crimes, wildly different outcomes. Tell me which one never sat right with you. And subscribe, because this isn't the last list like this.